Welcome to Ditch Auto, my name's Jared, and today we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons you would choose a Sony a6500 or perhaps even the a6300 over the Canon 80D. So, I'm going to talk about the flip side of this because I think there are pros and cons to both cameras, and so it really comes down to some of these reasons, which is why I decided to make these videos. They're both great cameras, they both shoot great photos and shoot great video, but they have some different features and strong points and weak points that the other one doesn't have. So let's talk about this guy first. This is the Sony a6500. It is the latest version of the camera of this particular platform. It's a little bit newer than the 80D, and also is a little bit more expensive than the 80D, especially now the prices came down a little bit on the 80D. So many of the things that I'm going to talk about with the a6500 are also true to the a6300, which is slightly cheaper. Well, it's a little bit cheaper. It's more along the lines of the price of the 80D than it is. So take that as you will. Most of these features are going to be between the two different options here. The camera that I'm actually filming with that you're watching me on is a a6300, which is why I don't have it here on the table. That's the one we use in the studio. So size is the number one thing. I mean, what you see here is a huge camera that looks like a big beefy DSLR, because it is, and then you have a small mirrorless camera over here, which to the untrained eye who doesn't know what they're looking at would think this is more of a beginner camera, simply just because of the size. Now, I love the a6500, the a6300, and I had an a6000. They're just great performing small camera bodies, and when I want something small to travel with, it's so much. I mean, I could take this camera, a couple extra batteries, and an extra lens, and it takes up the same amount of space as this camera. So as far as travel goes and just being able to take more stuff and take up less room, you're definitely better off with the smaller camera here, the a65 or the a6300. It just takes up less room. It's not as heavy. It takes fantastic photos, just like the 80D does. One can argue which one takes better photos, but it also comes down to the lenses you're using. Camera size, if that's a huge thing for you, like for a lot of the women out there who want a camera that's easier to fit in your purse, or you're carrying a bag already and you just want something small, this camera is definitely more appealing than a big DSLR. Or even for the rest of us out there that just want a smaller camera bag, you don't want to carry a big camera bag and big lenses. The Sony platform provides smaller camera bodies. Majority of the lenses are smaller, even though they still have the same, aperture, maximum apertures, same performance, same, focal distances, focal lengths, and smaller package. So there's a win there, I think, in camera size. And one could argue that some of the newer Sony lenses for the A7R, for example, I've got my A7R II over here. This isn't so small anymore. This is Sony. It isn't so small. It's questionably maybe even larger than the Canon. So you can't necessarily rule that out anymore. So anyways, size, definitely a thing. Low light performance is been better with the Sonys than with the Canons. It started with the Sony a7S hitting the market with its extreme low light capabilities, but some of that technology has trickled down into some of the other cameras, and specifically with the a65 and a6300, low light performance is a little bit better in these cameras than it is in the Canon 80D. Granted, it's a different sensor, it's a different technology. This is mirrorless. There's no mirror in there, and the sensor operates slightly different than it does in this. The functionality and the mechanics inside are slightly different. And I think, it's hard to argue whether or not one is better than the other, because the 80D is fantastic and takes great photos, but when it comes to low light situations, you can just go a little higher on your ISO with the a65 or the a6300 and still have nice, good quality images with not a whole bunch of noise in the image. There's just a little bit more room to play with the a6500. Now, 4K video is another thing. I know 4K video isn't the primary format. Most of us are still shooting in HD, but for me, I shoot an awful lot of stuff in 4K, and having 4K is a really good option. Now, with the a6300, which was the prior model to this, there was some overheating issues with 4K. It was really hard to shoot 4K in harsher, hotter situations and stuff like that, and the a6500, they fixed that problem. Obviously, the 80D here does not do 4K video, but it does do 1080 full HD video really well. And so if 4K isn't an option to you or you don't care, you know, it's hard to you know, really care which camera, because they both shoot fantastic HD. It's just with the a6500 you get 4K inside on both the 6500 and the 6300. So a feature of the mirrorless platform is a live viewfinder. Now, when you're looking through a Canon, like I am now, I'm looking through a mirror and out the lens, which technically is live view, I guess you could say, but you're not getting a good example of what you're gonna get. Like, I look through this and I have to kind of take a picture to see what my exposure is gonna be like. Of course, I have the exposure meter and my knowledge of photography to help me get close, but a lot of times you have to take a picture to see what you're gonna get. With the mirrorless system, when I'm looking through this viewfinder, obviously I see nothing right now because the camera's not powered on, but when I power it on, I'm seeing what the sensor sees, which is essentially the same thing you see on the back of the screen. And on the 80D, you have to look at the back of the screen in live view to see what the sensor is seeing. So you get that live view on the back panel, but you don't get it in the viewfinder. And that's a bummer because on this camera you get both. And also when you're taking pictures, you get your image preview. So when you take a picture and it shows you that image preview or that image playback shows in your viewfinder as well as on back of the screen. So, you know, you get that also, which means not taking a picture looking down, taking a picture looking down, and wearing out your neck looking down at the camera all the time to make sure that you got the shot. I can take a picture, look at the shot, take another picture, look at the shot, take another picture, look at the shot, without ever having to take the camera away from my eye, which is, it helps me to not miss moments. You miss moments when you're looking at the back of your camera, making sure you got the shot. And you don't have to do that when you're on a mirrorless camera. So the fifth thing is sensor stabilization, which is on the a6500 only, not the a6300. So this is an a6500 only feature. The sensor that is inside the camera has stabilization on it, which means even if your lenses don't have stabilization, you're getting image stabilization both in photo and video, which is great. On the 80D, you're only getting image stabilization if you have lenses that support it, such as this lens. And most of the lenses that support image stabilization are going to even be a little bit more pricey, so you're going to have to spend more money on lenses to get image stabilization. Now, this particular lens on this camera doesn't have image stabilization, but because I have stabilization on the sensor, I'm getting some stabilization there regardless of what lens I'm using. And then when I add a lens even that has stabilization, such as, I don't remember if this one has stabilization or not, but if I add like my 7200 on here, which does have stabilization, I'm getting a ton of image stabilization on the camera, which helps me get steadier shots, more sharp shots. It definitely helps me out when shooting video because it helps stabilize my video footage, resulting in better quality video footage. And to me, that's super important to have that. And since they added sensor stabilization on this camera, it's made it extremely more useful for me to where I'm not having to carry my big camera, which also has sensor stabilization on it, so that I can make sure to get those more steady shots. No longer do I have to carry that big camera on me. If I just want something small, I carry this. I get all the benefits of my bigger camera as far as stabilization goes. So those are the top 5 reasons that I could think of as to why you might want to choose the Sony a6500 or maybe even the 6300 over the Canon 80D. Now in the next video, which I recommend you check out, I'm going to talk about the Canon 80D as opposed to the a6500 and why you would choose this one over that one. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, we'd appreciate that, and subscribe to our channel here if you want to be notified when we put out new videos. Our whole thing here is talking about photography, getting the most out of our cameras, using our cameras, understanding them so that we could become better photographers and just better at capturing the world that is around us. So that's what Ditch Auto is all about. If you like that, subscribe to our channel. We'd love to have you along for the ride, and we hope to see you soon here again on Ditch Auto. Thanks a lot.